Okay. Hi. Hello. Good morning, all parents and students, and also good morning to all our students and parents online. Do let us know also for the parents and students online if you have any problems hearing us, okay, for this morning. So welcome everybody to this morning session on Unlocking Primary Science Secrets Super Session. Just to introduce myself, I'm teacher Wei Lun here. I'm the academic director here at MindStretcher, overseeing our academic team and the curriculum as well, and the teachers. And together with me today, we have our center colleague Xiao Hui, and also our main teacher who will be carrying out today's session, teacher Meng Yee. So teacher Meng Yee here is our head of science at MindStretcher. And really the objective of this morning session is that we are looking at this unlocking primary science secrets, specifically on tackling open-ended questions. So I do see in the group here actually quite a different profile of students. So maybe as a show of hands, and also for the students online as well, right? You all can also raise your virtual hand just so that we can get to know each other better. Like how many of you here are in primary 3 this year? So your child or yourself is primary 3. Okay, so one over here and one over there, right? So I understood. Okay, so primary 3, that's good, right? So trying to get a heads up into, you're learning science for the first year, trying to adapt to science also. Then what about primary 4? How many primary 4 in the crowd? And we can also have the virtual hand raised, and then we can see from there. Any primary 4? Oh, primary 4. Okay, one student here, primary 4 as well. Okay, thanks for that. Then primary 5. Any primary 5? Okay. Oh, quite a number of primary 5. Okay. So primary 5, I think, okay, still got one more year to the PSLE. And I see in the online also quite a number of primary 5. Indeed, I think primary 5 is the year whereby, things are really heating up, right, in terms of the exam requirement, in terms of the amount of science content you have to digest. But you still have a bit of time, right, to prep to the PSLE. And certainly, last but not least, what about the PSLE? Any students? Oh, a few, right, over there. So really in the thick of action, right? So are you all ready for PSLE? All ready, right? So all your content all digested. Papers due ready? 3-year series, got practice, everything. Okay, that's good. What about those online? How many? Or quite a number. Are you all ready for the PSLE? You can give a thumbs up if you are ready as well. Okay, good. So I see a lot of thumbs up. So hopefully all of you are all prepared and ready. Okay. So today's session really why we are focusing on like open-ended questions is because we do recognize for a lot of our students, especially I think the P6, the P5, you all can also attest to that. Open-ended questions is one of the key challenge, right? That we see a lot of students do face. Particularly, how do we think about keywords? How do we think about how to analyze the question, write the correct answer? So our teacher Meng Yee here will be taking over from here, right, to give you all some tips and techniques, and this will be applicable, I would say, for those who are just starting to learn the subject, and also for those of you who are really in the thick of the action, right, and trying to see how to ace your exams, okay? And to keep the session interactive, anytime that you all have any questions, be it right here or be it online, do let us know. So you all can just raise your hand and then we can take it from there. And after the session also, do feel free to stay back if you have any questions and we'll be happy to take it from there. It's also why we decided to do this as a hybrid format, because you realize a lot of times for the last couple of years, we have been doing this more as an online format, but we do recognize that after COVID, there should be more chances for us to meet in person, so that it's also easier for you all to ask our very own teacher in charge, right? The burning questions that you all have also. Okay, Ken? Yeah, so with that, I'll pass over to teacher Meng Yee. So he'll take over from now to go through today's content. Okay, Ken? Yeah, so teacher Meng Yee.
Right, thanks teacher Wei Lun. Right, so let me reintroduce myself again. I'm teacher Meng Yee, the head of science in MindStretcher. Right, so like what teacher Wei Lun mentioned, right, open-ended question is one of the component that a lot of you have trouble trying to answer and get the full marks out of it. Okay, so in exam we will know that usually we have MCQ, multiple choice questions. We also have open-ended questions. Okay, so we choose to talk about open-ended questions because open-ended questions are more difficult, right? As compared to multiple choice. Multiple choice, you have options, correct? All right, so today we'll try to teach you some techniques, how to analyze the questions and how to structure your answers, right? So for those going for PSLE, this is your last chance to boost your answering techniques and really, score the AL1 that you want to achieve, right? I hope you're aiming for AL1. Yes, are you? All right. And for those P5 going to P6, yeah, please also try to learn and make sure you try all these techniques that we are teaching you today, right? And be able to improve your answers so that you can do even better for P6, right? Because for when you go on to P6, the topics get even more difficult. Okay, so you do not want these answering techniques to pull you down. You want to make sure you focus on the concepts also. All right, so make sure we learn all these techniques well, right? And then we can craft our answers properly. Right, next. Yeah, so before we actually talk about the whole thing, just in case anyone do not know that we actually have Telegram communities, right? So for parents, if you have Telegrams, you can actually join us. And this Telegram community is where we share free materials, okay, and free tips, or let you know when we have free seminars like this or free webinars, right? So there's nothing to lose. If you join this, you can just access all the free materials for extra practice. If let's say you have not enough questions to do, you want to do more, you can easily find questions in this Telegram community, right? So if you also, yeah, so just scan. Apart from science, of course, we also have other subjects, so you can feel free to just join all these group channels. Right, there's really nothing to lose, right? Because we have free materials and free tips. There's even some quizzes sometimes, to check your understanding of some concepts. Yeah. Okay, if this none. Okay. Now, in case you have also any child that is also in secondary, yeah. So next. There's also secondary channel lah. In case you have any child that are in secondary level. Anyone here? No? Okay. Maybe wait for those online. If let's say you have siblings or your child is in secondary level, okay, do also scan this QR code to join our Telegram community. All right, because again, for secondary level, there are a lot of different level and subject, right? So for upper sec, there's physics, chemistry, okay, and so on. So all these different materials will really help you, boost your exam readiness. All right. Okay, I think we can move on. Right, one last thing here. Right, apart from all these Telegram community, we also have a lot of other resources. Okay, so you can just go and look up on our MyStretcher website, or you can scan this QR code to get all the different resources that we have, right, including listening compre or oral practice for English and mother tongue, right? So all this can also be found there. Okay, so you can look at the list of resources that we have, and all of them are free. Okay. Yeah, so you can take a look at it first. Let's give you a minute on that. I see a lot of thumbs up in the Zoom. All right, so do feel free to use all these materials. All these resources are really there to help students do well for their exams and really improve. Okay, so feel free to use them. Right? Yeah. Okay, so to the main topic today, right? So we want to tackle open-ended questions today, right? So like what teacher William mentioned, right? Why are we talking about this, which I already mentioned, and what teacher William already mentioned, right? So there's a reason for us to do this, right? So some of you are in P3, some of you are in P4, some of you are in P5. So you can see, right, from P3 going to P4, the questions are going to change. It gets a bit more difficult. Every level, when you go up, the questions get more complicated, more sophisticated, right? So later I'll show you some examples of the different types of questions in different levels, right? Yeah. So this is an example of what a student may receive in their exam paper. This is for P3 and P4 mainly, right? Is this the kind of question you have seen in your questions? Yeah. So you see in P3 and P4, now this is not what we, okay, open-ended questions, right, are questions that you need to write a lot. Okay, these are questions also found in booklet B, but I wouldn't say they are open-ended lah. So these are like the easier kind of questions where students just need to, circle, tick, or fill in the blanks. Okay, but this is only for P3 and P4, the lower block of primary science. And usually the exam paper only contain about 10 to 15 marks of such questions. Okay, like I said again, this is only for P3 and P4. Okay, but we will not be talking about this, so we'll be talking about the one that you really need to write on your own. Okay, so all this will really test the foundational concept, right? The basic concepts that you must already know, right, when you go for your final exam, final year exam. All right, so you look at next slide. So just like I said, right, up to 15 marks will be those fill in the blanks, tick and all. All right, then the rest will be like this. You are given answer lines, and you need to craft your own answers. Okay, so that's why it gets a bit more complicated, right? If you are not good at the sentence structuring, okay, maybe your language is not so strong, you do not know how to structure answers properly, do not know how to express your own answer, that's when you have some difficulty here. Correct? Right, so you see the first question, what is meant by temperature? Maybe that I can ask a P6 student here, what is temperature? This can actually be tested in a P4. It's a P4 question actually, but maybe I ask a P6 student, what is temperature? Girl, would you like to try? Very good. A measurement of how hot or cold an object is or something is. Okay, that's very good. So usually we measure temperature with a thermometer, right? So the thermometer will measure how hot or cold a substance is. Okay, but in this case, we are just defining the term temperature. Excuse me. Right, so that is very good. Looks like you are ready for your PSLE. Right, so just to let everyone know, right, this is what we call a definition question. We just kind of like define a single term. And it's actually tested in PSLE. Okay, they test terms like temperature, freezing, boiling, right? So those online also, right? So all of the P6 students, you all must know, they test some of these definitions, especially on this topic, right? Temperature, freezing, melting, the changes of state. They can also test other types of definition, such as what is digestion, what is deforestation, what is photosynthesis. So these are only 1 mark, but sometimes they test 2 or 3 questions in the exam. So if you do not know how to define them, then you have lost maybe 2 marks. And from AL1 to AL2, what's the difference? It's just 10 marks. Okay, so you want to secure all the marks, so make sure you know how to define them as well. Okay. So in part B, you'll see the questions are a bit more complicated, right? So you need to explain a certain phenomenon, a certain observation. So I'll talk about all these explanation type of questions later. So moving on to P5 and P6. Okay, this is actually tested in the P5 paper, but the concept is actually a P4 or actually a P3 question, right? This is a life cycle. Okay, so this is a life cycle question, which I will talk about it later. All right, so you can see in this question itself is 1 mark, but we have 2 parts to the question. We name, then we state a certain difference between the 2 stages. Okay, this one, I'll go through this question later. All right. Can you put this up? Let's see the question below. Okay, sorry. So there's this part below, it's at the very bottom here. So explain how a male mosquito helps to ensure that the life cycle of plant T continues. All right, so this is an explain question. Explain how the mosquito helps the life cycle of plant T continue. So you realize this is a mosquito question. Now, for those P6 students and maybe even P5 students, you realize that a lot of questions in the PSLE, right, they test on mosquitoes. Okay, I don't know whether they hate mosquito or what, but they always like to test on mosquitoes. If you look at past year paper, almost every year there's a question, almost, I would say not every year, but almost every year they test on mosquito. Okay, so be the life cycle or what the mosquito does, what they like to do. Okay, so yeah. So don't read up more on mosquito, maybe they test something that you have read up before. Right, so in this case, you realize, right, mosquitoes actually help in the life cycle of plant T. Why is that so? Anyone like to try? Any students like to try? Anyone want to volunteer? Or maybe parents want to try? Any students? Okay, the question is, explain how male mosquitoes help to ensure that the life cycle of plant T continues. Anyone? No? Pollination. Sorry? Pollination. Very good. Okay, but definitely the concept here is pollination. Okay, but you see, right, we cannot just write one word pollination. Okay, but the understanding is that, okay, this must be pollination. Okay, so we need to elaborate more on how this pollination help in the life cycle. That's why it's a 2 marks question. Okay, so later we'll go through how to explain such question. Okay, so in this case, let me just briefly explain more. So the mosquito will collect nectar, right? So when they feed on the nectar, so they will, the anthers of the, sorry, the pollen grains of the flower, will attach onto the mosquito while they get the nectar. So when they fly to other flowers, okay, so basically we are elaborating the pollination process. All right, so when they fly to the other flower, okay, so these pollen grains will get stuck onto the stigma of the flower. All right, and therefore pollination is completed, and that will result in that will help in the reproduction of the plant tea. Okay, so we have to write all that as a full answer. Right, so maybe we have all the concept, but how do you pen it down? That's the issue here. Okay, right. So in this example, this is also another P5 and P6 question. So you see, just now was just concepts. We talk about the life cycle. We talk about just explaining a science concept. But there are also questions which are experiment based, right? So you have this question, right? You have the water plant in a tube with some water. So this, so you see gas bubbles, right? So what is the process that is happening here in the presence of light? Anyone knows? Okay, not a physics student. Physics student surely know this. Anyone? Okay. So this is photosynthesis, right? Okay, the plants make food in the presence of light. All right. So we have experiment-based question. So we need to be able to analyze, the results that we have here and try to answer the question. Okay, we will go through that later. Okay, this is just for example. Yeah. Okay, this is just another type. Anyone fold paper plane before? Yeah, I'm sure you all have done this before, right? You fold a paper plane and just throw, and then see how far they travel. All right. So it actually is a PSLE question. This is a PSLE question. They say that they folded the paper aeroplane in different manner, okay, and just find out how long it reached the ground, how long it takes to reach the ground. Okay, then we are supposed to explain. Okay, you read the question here, it's very long, but in actual fact, we just need to identify which model, okay, and then give a reason for that for your answer. Okay, so we'll go through this question a bit later. So this is just for example now. Yeah. Okay, so you see, right, why we really want to tackle these open-ended questions? Because, like I mentioned earlier, other than MCQ, open-ended question also has a high weightage in PSLE exam. This is for PSLE. So those in P3 and P4, your final year exam format might be slightly different, especially P3. Most of the P4 will already follow the PSLE format for the end of year exam. Okay, not those tests, but the end of year exam will be, most of the P4 will also be this, but P5 and P6, most likely your school will be using these templates. I mean, using these exam formats. Okay, so 55 marks for MCQ, but each MCQ is actually 2 marks. So there are only 28 MCQs. But open-ended itself, 44 marks in total. Okay, 44 marks in total. There can be 12 to 13 questions. Okay, and each question there can be A, B, C, D, and then it could be in total 2 to 5 marks. Okay, so minimally there must be A and B. So maybe 1 mark each. Okay, but it can go up to 5 marks in total. Okay, that's for the PSLE lah. So total you can have 40 to 41 questions. Okay, 28 MCQ, maybe 13 open-ended questions. Okay, all are 100 marks. So exam we 1 hour 45 minutes for PSLE. Okay, so do take note of this exam format when you're going for your final year exam. Right. So let's go through this again. Just how we mentioned, right? Open-ended questions are difficult because we have no options. Right, we don't have the 25% chance to get it correct. Right, you have no options. You are just open. You are just on your own. Try to answer the questions. Right, you have to craft your own answer. So that makes it more difficult. And a lot of times students lose mark because Okay, these are a few things that the student always have trouble with. Did not read the instruction carefully. What did the question really ask you? That's the first thing. What's the instruction? What's the main thing to do? Okay. Second one, maybe you didn't know what concept was really tested. You see the question on mosquito? Okay, maybe you think of something else. Okay, so that was on life cycle and reproduction in plants. But maybe you thought of adaptation, for example. But adaptation also is linked there. Okay, did not use keywords. Now this is a very common problem. Okay, you could, like I said, you might have the concept in your head, but when you try to write it down, you forget to write 1 or 2 keywords, and that might lose the mark. Okay, could not understand the situation in the question. Like for example, the experiment question. A lot of information, you have the table, you might have graphs, but you actually didn't understand what's actually happening. Okay, so later we'll go through some examples for that. And the last one, could not structure an answer, right? So without the keywords, without a proper answering techniques, then you do not get the full marks. Okay, so we'll teach you techniques today, frameworks, okay, that will actually tackle all these problems. All right? Yeah, so the first one we'll teach you, okay, is this CCC framework. Right, so this CCC, the first C stands for command word. Okay, second C stands for concept. The third C stands for context. So let me elaborate a bit more. Right, command word. Command word basically tells you what you need to do what you need to write down for your answer. Okay, so later we'll talk about that. Okay, concept is the science concept. Is it talking about the life cycle? Is it talking about characteristic of the mosquito? Okay, for example, like it can fly from flower to flower, it lay eggs, these are characteristics. Okay, so key concepts. So when you see the question, you read through the whole question and think about what is being tested. Okay, and when you read through the question, what are you looking for? You are looking for keywords. All right, you are looking for hints in the question to tell you what you need to write down. So that is the context. What are the essential information that you need to extract? Okay. And once you have all the essential information, do you understand what is happening? What is the experiment that they are doing? Okay. Then you connect it to your science concept, which you have identified in the second part. Okay. So maybe when you just look at this, maybe, okay, not too sure what I'm talking about. Let's try a question. Same question. Now, this is a life cycle question, so actually a P3 student can also answer this. So name stage A and state one difference between stages A and B. Okay, before we answer, let's first talk about the command word. Like I said, the command word, which is the first C in the CCC, right, tells you what you need to do. So what do we need to do? We are supposed to name a stage, name the stage A, right? Then we are supposed to state the difference. So we are looking at this first term. It's like a verb, right? So we're supposed to name something and state something, right? So these are the command words. What is the concept here? Look at this whole question. So of course they say it's a life cycle. So that is the first thing. You must understand the life cycle of the mosquito, right? In the topic of in the topic of life cycle, there are a few organisms, a few living things to learn about, right? Mosquito, grasshopper, chicken, frog, and okay, forgot what else already. Okay, but mosquito, life cycle, chicken, frog, those are the most common ones. Okay. So other than knowing the stages, right? These are a 4-stage life cycle. We need to know, for example, what are the characteristics in each stage. Right? So stage A, what does it do? Stage B, what does it do? When it's egg, what does it do? When it's adult, what does it do? Okay, so these are characteristics. It may not just be the mosquito, it could be other organisms. So you must know all this. Okay? Then the context in this case, okay, in this case, the context is a bit straightforward. We just need to know the difference between the stages. Okay? So like I say, right, what's the essential information for context? First thing is to find the essential information. The life cycle, okay, and we need to know the difference. So we understood the situation, we are comparing the stages. So anyone has questions for this? Anyone has question for this part? Or understand the CCC here? This is one example. Later, you all will try to answer question. Okay, so let's answer this question here now. Now we have analyzed this question. So how do I answer this? Name stage A. Girl, would you like to try what is stage A? Lava. Well done. Okay. State one difference between stages A and B. Maybe I have another student to try. Yes. What? Stage A move, but stage B don't move. Okay, very good. Is there another difference that we can talk about? Yes, you want to try again? Very good. Okay, now I would say what she mentioned and what the other boy mentioned also correct. So the boy mentioned that stage A moves, but stage B doesn't. Okay, and the girl mentioned that stage A, the animal in stage A feeds or eats. Okay, but when it's at stage B, it doesn't. Okay, so let us look at a simple example, a simple answer. Now look at this answer. Name stage A. So this is just an example of answer. Wiggler. You all know what's a wiggler? That's the name of the larva stage of the mosquito. Okay. State one difference between stages A and B. So the mosquito feeds in stage A, but not in stage B, like what the girl mentioned, because in stage A, it needs to eat a lot to grow. Is there any problem with this answer? Let me ask the other boys. Yes, boy? Is there any problem with this? Yes. Is there any issue with this answer? Hello? Yes. Yeah. Yes. What do you think? Or do you think this answer is good?
It's the wiggler, right?
Okay. What's wrong with the wiggler? Do we need to name the animal?
I don't think we need to say wiggler. We should
Okay.
just say it lava.
Very good. So you see, right? When they ask to name the stage, we just, okay, based on the syllabus, right? We are not required to go and identify, oh, this is a wiggler, that's the caterpillar. No, that's not what we are supposed to do. We are just supposed to name the stage. And we just learn 4 stages, right? The egg, larva, pupa, and adult. Okay, we do not need to go and name, this is the wiggler, and this is, I also don't know what it is called already. Okay, so we don't need to do that. Okay, so for example, if this is a butterfly, right? So it's not the caterpillar, it's not the cocoon, or, you know, we don't need to do that. So we just need to name it egg, larva, pupa, adult mosquito. Okay, what else? Is there anything else that is also wrong with this answer? Maybe this, why? Maybe let's try. Is this answer, other than the wiggler, is there something wrong with the answer? Anything else that is wrong? Or is it very good? It's okay, you can speak up a little bit. Don't be shy, it's okay. No? All good? Okay, maybe I ask another, or anyone? Anyone? What about you?
Must you really explain that it really needs to eat the
Must we really explain that it really needs to eat a lot to grow? Very good. So that is the problem with this answer, right? Because what does the question require you to do? Like I say, right, the command word tells you what you need to do. So you need to name and state. But this answer, what have we done? We have stated, okay, so mosquito feeds in stage A, but it's not in stage B. Then it went on to explain, when we use because we are explaining, right? Because, okay, why it needs to eat. But do we need to do that? No, because the question asks you to state, not explain. Okay? So this is the correct answer. So this is the correct answer, which I think we have already addressed, larva stage, and we just need to state the difference. Okay, so that is the correct answer. So we do not need to write extra. Okay, but doesn't mean that when you write extra, they deduct marks from you. As long as what you have written is not incorrect, then you should still get the full marks, at least for the second part. So the first one is must be larva, okay, not the wiggler. Any questions for this? Okay, all right, thank you. Right, so we will go through some of these common words, right? So state, it could be state, name, identify, or list. So that is ready to give a direct answer, a concise answer. We don't need to explain anything, like what we have seen just now, right? So these are some examples of PSLE questions. Just going through some of these, right? So state two forces acting on the polar bear as it walks on the ice. This one, let me ask a P6 student. What are the two forces acting on a polar bear if it walks on the ice? Yes, by the back. Gravitational force and frictional force. Very good. So you see, the answer is just giving two forces. That's it. We don't need to explain why there's frictional force, why there's gravitational force. There's no need to explain that. Okay? State a difference. So it's just like just now that question, we just write down a difference. Okay? Or state two other variables. Variables are factors in the experiment that will affect the result. Okay, so we just write down what are the variables. For example, the volume of water, the temperature of water. Those are variables that will affect the results. Okay? Yeah. So the second command word is describe. Okay? Describe. This term, okay, tells you that you need to give a detailed account. So you describe what is happening without explaining. So same thing, we don't need to explain. When they never ask you to explain, don't need to explain. Okay? So there are questions such as, describe how substance N affected the number of times bees visited both containers from day 1 to day 10. Okay, so we just need to describe how this substance N affected the number of times the bee visited the different flowers. Okay, later we'll look at this question. Describe two ways that Ahmad can separate the glasses. So this question is, for example, the two glasses are stuck together. I describe how I can separate them. Okay. So that I'm sure you all have seen that kind of question before, right? Especially the P4 students up to P6, right? The two glasses stuck together. So what's the concept that we must use to separate the two glasses? Anyone? Anybody? No? Okay, so if the glasses are stuck together, you must use expansion and contraction, right? Expand the lower one so it becomes loose, okay? Or you contract the upper one. You just put some cold water, it becomes smaller, so you can remove it, okay? So we are just describing. We don't need to explain why we are doing it. We just describe what we need to do, all right? So these are just examples of PSLE questions. So we look at one example question on the next slide. Yeah. So this is a PSLE question. So just spend a while reading this. Okay, we have this container R, container S. Okay, container R only has sugar water. Container S has sugar water and substance N. So there's a difference, right? Okay, then we let some bees enter the cage. Okay, then what this student measure? Okay, it will count the number of bees that visited each container, be it R or S. Okay, they're attracted to the sugar water. But what we want to see is whether, okay, the substance N affected the number of times the bees visited both containers. So you see, it's a very long question. We have a diagram, we have a graph, so it gets a bit more complicated. Okay, but do not be afraid to tackle the question. Okay, so we go through the triple C. So command words, what's the first thing? Describe. So we just need to describe how it affects. What is the concept here? Is pollination, right? Okay, but not into the actual pollination because we are talking about a setup. So the bees will be attracted to the sugar water to get the nectar, but the concept behind is pollination. But what we really need here is to be able to read the graph and be able to tell the relationship. So with substance N, how has it affected? Okay, without substance N, how has it affected? Okay, so these are the concepts that we need. Other than the textbook concept of pollination, we need some skills to read the graph, okay, to answer experiment type of question, relationship. All right, so the context. When we talk about context is, again, what are the essential information we need? So we go back to the diagram. R does not have substance N. But S has substance N. So that's the first thing. Okay, so when the bees enter from here, right? So it's like they can go anywhere. So that is something that we must know, right? So that is, and that's also trying to understand what is happening here. So is it attracted to substance N or not attracted to substance N? Okay, so we must understand the whole situation. That is the purpose of context. So once you have gone through this, basically you have analyzed the question, then you can answer the question. Okay, so how has substance N affected the number of times bees visited both containers? Anyone like to try? Physics students? Girl? Wait, girl, Eric, yeah. Girl, would you like to try? Oh, sorry, she wants to try.
Substance N is the nectar which makes the bees attract.
Okay, but you see, right, you have started off your answer as, is it because you are trying to explain? But is our question on explaining? We are not explaining why it's attracted to it. Okay, we are trying to describe whether it has been attracted or not attracted. Okay, so good try. So that's why we are teaching you all these command words, because very important. Because once you write, it's because the substance N is like a nectar that is attracting the bee. You will surely get wrong, because we are not explaining. We're trying to describe the relationship. So let's understand this again, so to help the P3 and P4 students. So what we see here, container R doesn't have substance N. Okay, so from day 1 to day 5, container R is the white rectangle. Okay, it's a white rectangle. How has it changed over the 10 days? How has it changed over the 10 days for the right container R? It has decreased, right? So that is the relationship. Okay, that is the relationship. So without substance N, the number of bees that visited container R has decreased over the 10 days. So we are describing that. We are reading the graph. We're trying to describe what has happened, not explaining why it happened. Okay? On the other hand, when there's substance N, which is the container S, the striped box, the striped rectangle, so you can see over the 10 days, it has increased. Okay? Next. Right, so this is the answer. So across the 10 days, without substance N, which is in container R, there are fewer bees visiting it. Okay, but for container S that has substance N, right, there are more bees that visited it over the 10 days. Okay, so this is one way you can write the answer. Of course, in actual exam, you will phrase the answer very differently. Okay, this is just one way to phrase it. But essentially, as you get the main point across, okay, over the 10 days, number of bees that goes to container R decrease, number of mosquitoes that visited container S increase. You have the essence of the answer, you will get the 2 marks there. Okay, 1 mark for each trend. Okay, so this is the first trend for R, this is the second one for S. Okay, so what we have done here is really going through the whole question and especially focusing on what the question requires you, so which is describe, not explain. Okay, any questions regarding this? Okay, right. So we have talked about state, which is the first command word. Second command word is describe. Now the third one is explain, which is we're trying to explain using science concept why some things happen, right? So for example, explain why the wires snapped at night. Okay, later I'll give you the context. Explain why the reading on the balance increased in diagram 2. Okay, so we're trying to use science concept to explain why some things happen. Explain how the mist was formed. Okay, let me use the last question here. Explain how the mist was formed. So we're talking about, okay, maybe I give you the context here. Maybe we have a kettle. You all boil water at home, right? So when the water boils, you see mist coming out of the kettle, or you see mist above the kettle. Sorry, where are the P5 students here? P5? P5. Okay, yes, very good. Thanks for volunteering the answer here. So explain how the mist will form. So let's say I boil a kettle of water. I can see mist. Can you explain how the mist was formed?
Touches the polar surface of the kettle, which gain heat and condenses into water drop. That's when mist and which forms and
Okay. Thanks for the answer. But I can already identify some problem with the answer. Okay, so maybe you have that thinking, right? But I'll explain to you what was wrong with the answer. Okay, first, mist is something we can see, right? Mist is something that we can see, and what if we can see it? Is it in the gaseous state or is it in the liquid state? It's in the air. It's in the air. We can see it, right? Like sometimes if let's say you all go Genting Highland, right? You can see the mist. Is it a liquid state or is it a gaseous state? It's a liquid state. It's liquid, very fine liquid particles, water droplets. They are in the air. So you must understand that. Okay. So it's a liquid state. So which means that something must have condensed. So when you see the mist above the kettle, there is actually water droplets, not water vapor. Okay, so when the water boils, it becomes steam. So you started off with the warm water vapor. That's correct. Warm water vapor come into contact with a cooler surface. But just like you mentioned, come into contact with the surface of the kettle. So that is where it is wrong. Because the surface of the kettle is a solid surface, but the mist is in the air. So what is the cooler surface here? It's not the kettle itself, but it's the surrounding air, which is the cooler surface. Okay, the air itself is cooler, but the steam is coming into contact with the cooler air. So that's why it will lose heat. Just how you said gain heat. So that's also wrong. So you lose heat, then condenses to form the water droplets. Okay, this is a very important question, which many students, even at PSLE level, P6 level, are still trying to answer it correctly. Okay, so you must understand the full explanation for this. Have I made it clear for you? Okay, anyone got question regarding this? Okay, all right. So make sure you understand how the mist was formed. Okay, there are many different ways to test you on condensation. If you all have seen the last few years PSLE, especially one that was very apt, that time during COVID, they asked when we wear the mask, right? We have many of you wearing spectacles. So what happens? Sometimes your spectacles fog up, becomes blur. You cannot see. Why? So you need to think about it, right? So it fog up because there are some water droplets that formed because your spectacles was a bit cooler. But when you breathe out, you are wearing the mask, right? So when you breathe out, it's warm air. So warm air touches the cooler spectacle, lose heat, and condenses. Okay, in my structure, we actually teach you WCLC, but that's for condensation question. Okay, that's for condensation question. So warmer water vapor come into contact with the cooler spectacle, that's the W and C, loses heat, that's the L, and the last C is to condense. Okay, so condense to form water droplets. So that's how the spectacle get fogged up. It's the same case when you exit a very cold bus, right? I'm sure some of you have experienced before. You take a very cold, you go up the bus is very cold, but when you leave the bus, you cannot see anything, right? Because the spectacle is already blurred. You cannot see anything, okay? Right, so let's look at this example. Read the question first. Okay, this is a telephone line, not so common in Singapore, but in other parts of the world. Okay, yes, you can see this is very common in Malaysia. So we have wires that are secured. Okay, the wires are secured tightly on these wooden supports. Okay, they are put tightly together. This is done during the day when there's a sun. Okay, you read the question. So at night, suddenly heard a crack and found that the wire snapped. Okay, there was no wind, there was no animals that disrupted this whole wire and support. So what have caused the wires to snap? Anyone like to try this? Anyone like to try this question? This is okay. So after you read the question, okay, maybe before giving the answer, which is maybe a bit more difficult, you think about the concept here. What do you think is the topic or concept being tested here? Why? Can you tell me what is the topic or the concept being tested here? Not the answer, not the answer. Don't need to give me an answer. Just tell me what do you think is the concept. Expand and contract, very good. So after you read through the whole question, which is the part of the CCC, right? The context. Yeah, read through the context. The context is that, okay, this is tight, and this is put tightly in the day when there's a sun, it's very hot. At night, we must know it's cooler. So that's when there's a contraction. Okay, so we go through a CCC, right? So command word, you try to explain why this thing happened. Concept, like what the boy mentioned, this is a question on heat, expansion, contraction. Okay, so it happens because it was hot in the day but cold at night. So that causes the wires to snap. Okay, so we have read through the whole question. So these are the contexts, okay, that will link to the concept. So they will put, this is basically what I mentioned. They will put tightly under the sun, okay, but it snaps at night. But the actual reason, okay, why it snaps? Because when you pull the wire very tightly, like, okay, just for example, you pull rubber band. Okay, you pull rubber band to a certain extent, it will snap. But in this case, it's slightly different. It's trying to contract. Okay, so if they are secured tightly, and they try to contract means they become shorter, become smaller. So they can't do that because they can't become any shorter. So that is when it snapped. Okay, so we're trying to explain why this thing happened. Yeah. Okay, so this is an explanation. So you see, like, this question is actually 2 marks hidden behind here. So it's 2 marks. So you need to explain what happens. So we talk about the day first. Okay, it was put tightly. Okay, we find information in the question. It was put tightly. At night, the lower temperature, okay, caused the wires to contract. Okay, so all this, the first sentence is basically what we have analyzed. Okay, the actual explanation is, so because they were tightly secured, then there's no space, they could not contract, and then that's why it snapped. Okay, but you must also have the first part here to give some context. Okay, it was tight in the day, but it was trying to contract, but it couldn't. So it has snapped eventually. Okay, so very importantly, you must go through this CCC method. Okay, not saying that in the exam you're going to write all this out. No, you don't do that in the exam. This is really just a technique, to let you analyze the question, know what you are supposed to do, explain, describe, or state. Okay, know what concept is being tested. Because once you know the concept, your keywords will come out. Okay, once you have mastered the concept, let's say, okay, I have revised on the topic of heat. I know expansion, I know contraction. Contraction means become shorter. Okay, so all these keywords will come out eventually if you mastered the topic. Okay, any questions for this? Anyone? No? Okay, next. Right, and the last command word that we'll go through is suggest. So we have talked about state, describe, explain. The fourth one is suggest. This is the last one. So for suggest question, we are supposed to give a sensible idea or explanation that fits the situation. So the situation usually is something that we are not familiar with. So they could ask, suggest how. Suggest how means to give an idea. Okay? Sometimes we still need to apply science knowledge. Sometimes we apply general knowledge. Later we'll see some example, then you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so suggest how. Okay, read this question. This is actually the same question to the previous one when the wires are tied together. So it snaps. So suggest how, okay, we can build a model at the same place, but the wires will not snap. So suggest how, right? We give a sensible idea. What could work so that the wires will not snap? So you give an idea. So this one, anyone want to try? Yes, yes.
The wire so that I can also contract and expand.
Very good. Okay, loosen the tightness of the wires. Okay, or hang the wires more loosely. Okay, so that there's some space for contraction during the night or expansion during the day. Okay, thank you. So that's an idea, right? So hang the wire loosely. We just need to describe how. So we just do that. Okay, so we don't need to explain, but I've just added in the explanation, right? So that there's some space for contraction, or you can even talk about expansion. Okay, so just give a possible idea, that's it. We don't need to go on and explain. Okay, if they ask you to explain, then it could be a 2 marks question already. All right, so just give an idea, right? Okay, look at this question. Okay, just imagine yourself, you throw a ball, okay, into the water. Will you be able, okay, read this part, so you throw the ball, just imagine you're launching, this is launching the ball, but let's say you throw the ball. Okay, there was no wind, and what was measured is the distance traveled by the ball. Okay, distance traveled by the ball. So the question asks, suggest why it is difficult to measure the distance moved. So imagine this is a swimming pool, right? You just throw the ball inside. Can you determine where it actually landed? Good? Why?
As the water ripples and keeps on making the ball move a little bit by a few centimeters. That's why it's really hard.
Very good. Okay, see, this is actually a PSLE question. Okay, but she is P3, so very good. So this is a suggest why question, right? Can you go back to the previous one? So when you see suggest, right? Previous, yeah. Give a sensible idea, which is suggest how, you give an idea. Suggest why, which is the question later, just now. Give a sensible explanation. So you explain why we cannot determine the exact distance. Okay, so what are we applying? Are we applying science knowledge? No, what? The water moving, it's not really science. What? You drop the ball inside the water move. That's not science, right? That's general knowledge. So in PSLE, they can ask such question. So you need to think about some of these ideas. So you throw the ball into the water. So you think about it. Why can't I determine where the location is? So you have to think logically. Okay? Yeah. So her answer is perfect. Okay, but yeah, so this is the triple C. So which I already talked about it. Suggest. Okay, concept here. This question is mainly on forces. Okay, but this part is just a general knowledge. Okay, context is that the ball was launched and then it hits the water. There's a splash. There's some ripples. Okay, so she has answered it correctly. Hit the water surface. There's some ripples. So we cannot identify the exact position. The ball might have moved. Okay, or the water ripple makes the ball move up and down. We cannot tell where's the exact position. Okay, therefore we cannot measure the distance. Okay, so this is a type of suggest question, but we're trying to explain something, okay, based on what we think is correct. Okay, so far we have gone through all the command words. State, describe, explain, suggest. Anyone has question on these 4 command words? Okay, we have also went through the triple C framework. Command word, concepts, context. Okay? Yeah, you learn next. Okay, so we have went through all these. So just to summarize them again, we put them all together. All right, so state is really just to give an answer, concise answer. Describe, you give a bit more detail. Describe how something happened. Okay, describe how what was that the question again? Yeah, so we give a detailed account how the bee or the mosquito help in the life cycle of the plants. Okay, explain, give a scientific explanation. Suggest, give a sensible idea, or give a sensible explanation to why something happened. Okay, you may need to apply some general knowledge. Okay, so essentially what all these Yeah, so this is a CCC framework, which just to let you all know again, is the same slide as earlier on when we first talked about this. Okay, so we have covered the CCC, talk about the command words, which are all the 4 terms earlier. Concept is really to go through the key concept of the question. Okay, but sometimes the concept not so clear. So you have to go through the whole question, find the essential information, then go back to identify what is this concept, like the wire snapping. Okay, maybe on the first look, you don't know what it's talking about, but you must read through the whole question, then you know it's testing on expansion, contraction. Okay, so essentially what have we done? We have learned how to break down questions into manageable parts. Okay, on first look, you see, oh, we have diagram, we have graph. Wow, looks like it's very tiring. But if you break it down, you find out what the question is actually asking, what's the command word, what is the context, what is the concept, then it makes it more manageable. Okay, so we have done all the analysis. We look at all the essential information, what are the hints in the question that we need. Okay, know exactly what is being asked. Do you understand what is the situation? Okay, do you understand what is the situation in the question? And be able to identify the concepts and the topic to focus on. Okay, so essentially we have went through all these points when we go through the questions. All right. Right, so just now I showed you this slide, right? Where we are talking about not able to follow instructions, don't know what the concept, don't know what the keywords, and do not understand the situation. So if you apply your CCC framework, okay, all these the CCC framework will have eliminated all these issues. But what about the last one? Could not construct the answers properly. Okay, and if you write it in your own words, most of the time, your answers, your meaning might have changed. Okay, you reverse your sentence structure, then maybe the meaning is different now. Okay, so we'll also teach you an answering framework. Okay, so that's what we call the AIR. So this is the AIR answering framework. Okay, so AIR, A for answer, I for information, R for reasoning. Answer means you just give a response. It could be a claim, it could just be an alphabet, it could be a choice, yes or no, it could be. Information, you extract information in the question, be it the graph, the table. What does the data tell you? Okay, then explain using science concept, link all the points together. Okay, so if you have used a CCC, you know what concept is tested, what's the question you're talking about. Okay, then you explain using a science concept that you know. So we'll go through an example on this to understand what this is about. So back to this question on the aeroplane, paper aeroplanes. This is a simple example, right? We look at, okay, you read the question first, huh? Okay, so in this question, we have 3 models of the aeroplane. So again, it's similar to that ball going to the water, but this time around is the aeroplane hitting the ground. Okay, we just measure the time for it to reach the ground. Okay, so the question is, which one of the models, A, B, or C, should he use to design a toy aeroplane that can fly the furthest distance? Give a reason for your answer. Okay, so you see, right, this is the data that we have, which is the time taken for each model to reach the ground. So which model should we use for it to fly the furthest? This is a P3 student is very interested, wants to answer all the questions. What about the rest? Any P4 students want to answer the question also? Volunteer yourself. Right, it's really time to know. You see, we are already reaching the end of September. Your exams are really coming. So it's give it a try. Okay, it's okay to get it wrong. Now this is the point. This is the time to learn and improve. Okay. So any other student want to try? Anyone want to volunteer yourself? Yes, you want to try? B. Okay, so you have chosen B. That is your A answer. And what else? So you have chosen your choice. So we are supposed to give a reason for your answer. So why do you choose B? Because it fly the furthest. No, that has not answered the question because you are just telling me that you will fly the furthest. So if you just tell me B, but your reason you have not really explained. You're just repeating the question, you will fly the furthest. So what makes you think that you will fly the furthest? What is the date? Sorry? The time. What about the time? Time is the longer. You see what he has done? He has extracted information from the question. So if I go back to the previous slide, he has used I, right? That's how he answered, okay, B. Information is to extract results or observation in the question. So you talk about the time being the longest. Okay, you spend the longest time in the air. But that is information. So what if you spend the longest time in the air? Then it can travel the furthest. So that's the explanation. Okay, so yeah. So if you spend the longest time in the air, then it will stay in the air the longest and travel the furthest. Okay, so you complete the whole sentence. So this question is only 1 mark because it's very straightforward. If you know the time is the longest, you will stay in the air longer and travel the furthest. Okay. Alright, so this is the answering framework. We use AIR. Answer, information, and reasoning. Okay. Now, for this question is 1 mark because the time is just all very linked closely together. But a lot of times, this kind of question is actually 2 marks or could even go up to 3 marks in total. You see some example. Yeah. So this is another question. This is on water and changes of state, a P5 topic. Okay, we have 3 substances, P, Q, and R. Freezing point, melting points. Okay, so they say that Meng Yee has a closed container of volume 100 cm cube or cubic centimeter. She stored 150 cm cube of a substance in the container at 30 degrees Celsius. State which substance, P, Q, or R, she stored in the container. Explain your answer. So you see, this is 2 marks. The phrasing is actually very similar to the previous one. We are supposed to state which substance, then we explain why we choose that. Okay, so you think about it. Okay, students online can also think about this, huh? So you can put your answer in the chat. Give me the full answer, okay? Full answer, don't just everyone saying the substance P, substance P. Okay? There is less friction. Why is there friction here? Okay, so this question is nothing to do with friction or what, right? What's the topic here? Maybe you can do a quick triple C here. All right, triple C, the first one, command word, state, explain. We have 2 command words. You need to do 2 things. Tell me either P, Q, or R, then you explain why you have chosen that. Okay? Concept, freezing, melting, freezing boiling point of substances. Okay? That's the concept. Context here, this is some of this context. The container is only 100 cm cube. But somehow she managed to store 150 cm cube of that in the 100 cm cube container. How is that possible? Doesn't make sense, right? How do you put 150 cm cube in 100 cm cube? It's going to overflow. So what's the concept here? What allows this to happen? So you must think. Okay, so it's not so straightforward. So anyone want to try on this? Anyone? Feel free to volunteer yourself. No? This one is more for P5 and P6 lah. So yes, go. Does not. Okay, I assume your answer is P, right? Okay.
At 80 degrees and does not have, and gas does not have definite volume, so it can be compressed in the 100 cm cube for volume.
Yes, very good. Very good. Okay, so what she has mentioned is, okay, she has identified is P, and she says that P is a gas at 30 degrees Celsius. You can add on one more point, that is because the boiling point is 15, so 30 is above 15, so it's a gas. Okay, but that's okay if you say it's a gas at 30 degrees Celsius. So you talk about the property of a gas, which is actually a P4 topic, right? What are the properties of a gas? No definite shape, no definite volume. And the third one can be compressed because there's no definite volume, right? So 150 cm cube was the initial volume, but I can compress that amount of air to fit into 100 cm cube. Okay, so this definitely tells you is a gas. The substance is a gas. Okay, so actually you have already worked backwards, right? You're trying to fit a larger volume into a smaller volume. So that is a property of a gas. It can be compressed. So you are trying to find which substance is a gas at 30 degrees Celsius. Okay, so that's the whole process. Yep. Okay, so we can use the AIR to structure our answer. First, we think about the substance. Then information we got, boiling point was 15. Okay, boiling point was 15. So at 30 degrees Celsius, it is a gas. You must first identify it is a gas. P is a gas at 30 degrees Celsius. That is your first mark after 2. Then we talk about the property of a gas. It can be compressed. So it is able to fit into the 100 cm cube, even though it was 150 cm cube at first. Okay, great answer. Thanks for volunteering. Okay, anyone has question for this? Anyone on the ground here? Okay, for P3 or P4 students, if let's say you don't understand this, okay, don't worry. Okay, you will learn more about this next year. Okay, but the part on compressing, this one you should understand. Okay, you should understand this part on compressing, right? Because you have learned this under the topic of matter. Okay? No questions, huh? Okay. Let's look at another example. Okay, so we have liquid T. Okay, so what Nicole is trying to study is whether liquid T is more effective in killing bacteria compared to soap. Okay, this question can be slightly more difficult. Okay, so she rubbed her right thumb on the tabletop and cleaned her thumb with soap. Okay, then she recorded number of bacteria on her thumb at 3 minutes and at 1 hour. Okay, that's why we have 2 graphs here. So at 3 minutes, using both the soap and tea. At 1 hour, using both the soap and tea. Okay, so what can she conclude about effectiveness of liquid tea? Now, this question is on conclusion, another type of open-ended question. Okay, so this is like an experiment-based question. We have the aim. What is her aim? Her aim is to study whether liquid tea is more effective at killing bacteria compared to the soap. So when I talk about conclusion, it must answer the aim. So anyone want to try? What is the conclusion here? Anyone want to try what's the conclusion? What can you conclude from this result? Basically, the conclusion must answer the aim, right? The aim is to find out whether tea is more effective in killing bacteria as compared to the soap. Yes, girl? Very good. You've earned that 1 mark. Perfect answer. Okay? Yeah. So the first answer. So liquid tea is more effective than soap at killing the bacteria. So we have concluded correctly. So you see, we have answered the aim. The conclusion must be linked to the aim. Okay, if your conclusion is not linked to the aim, then you have not concluded anything correctly. Okay, because why you do this experiment, that's your aim. So after you have done the experiment, you have your results, your conclusion must answer to your aim. Okay, which is whether tea is more effective or less effective at killing bacteria. That's it. Then we answer the then we explain the question. You see, this in total is 3 marks. But in actual fact, it's very similar to the past 2 questions that we have tried, right? We are supposed to state something, then we explain why that is. Okay, but previously the state is just to state one object. Is it P or is it B? Okay. But now we state one conclusion. But in total, this is worth 3 marks. So explaining itself is 2 marks. So we have split the AIR here. The first A is just to answer the conclusion. Okay, but I and R is under part 2 here. Okay, so what information have we gotten in order to conclude that T is more effective? So you look at the graph. How do you know T is more effective? How do you tell? Anyone else want to try? All the boys at the back, anyone want to try? What makes tea more effective than the soap? Yes.
The graph shows that the number of bacteria has decreased by when using liquid tea.
Okay, the number of bacteria has decreased when using liquid tea as compared to the soap, right? At each time, at 3 minutes and at 1 hour. Yes. Okay, good. So we can see, right, at each time here, 3 minutes and 1 hour, when we use liquid tea, the number of bacteria is a lot lesser. Okay, so that is one possible answer. All right, so with that, we can tell that okay, tea must have been more effective at killing bacteria because for each, again, they are much lesser. Yeah, and another one. Okay, so I have these 2 information here. So I use AIR, right? So in this case, I've extracted information. The information is that at 3 minutes, at 1 hour, okay, both of them, there's a lower number of bacteria as compared to when we use the soap. Okay, so when we conclude it, okay, so tea has killed more bacteria. But I will not, this is just an example of the answer. This is not the correct answer that I want. This is not the final answer that I want. Okay, I have one more answer. So hold on your camera here. Okay, so actually what is even better, so just now we have only just compared each of this time. What about over the time in the span of 1 hour? If I compare, right, initially when I used soap, it was this level. 1 hour has passed, or 57 minutes has passed, it has increased this much. As compared to when I use liquid tea, yes, it has killed more, but over the 1 hour, it only increased a little bit. So I'll take that as the second point that will really get the second mark. Okay? So it caused a very little increase in the number of bacteria. So not only it killed it effectively, it also controlled the reproduction of the bacteria. So that makes it more effective overall. Okay? All right. So do not just talk about at each time interval, at each time, it was lesser. Actually, it's the same point, right? If you talk about 3 minutes, 1 hour is lesser, that will actually only give you 1 mark out of the 2. So you must think about, okay, what could be a second point that is different from just talking about is lesser at each time. So talk about the increase over that 1 hour. Did it increase a lot? Did it increase a little? Okay, so that is the second mark. Okay, so I said this question is slightly more difficult because the graph, we need to analyze the graph more in detail. Okay? All right, any questions for this? No? Okay. Right. Okay, so what we have learned today, right? The CCC framework, okay, the AIR answering framework, right? I repeat again, CCC is the question analysis framework. We analyze the question from the top to the bottom, analyze the graph, the text, and find out all the hints, all the keywords that we can help to answer the question. Okay, AIR is answer, information, and reasoning. So this is the framework to answer, to structure your answer. But if you look at the type of question, right, when we use AIR, it doesn't apply to every single question. Like for example, the first few questions when we did the CCC, AIR doesn't work there as well. So it doesn't apply to all. It applies to those that you really need to state something, then you explain why you choose that. So that is when you use the AIR. Sometimes the question will test you such that you do not need to choose an option, you just use I and R. So you extract information from the question, what does the graph tell you? Then you explain why that is so. Okay, so that is just without choosing, but essentially you can still use most of this, right? Maybe they have given you the choice, the A, but you just extract information and you supply the reason. Okay, so do make full use of this, especially for those P5, P6 students. This is very important. P4 students and P3 students, okay, you can start to apply them, get the hang of using it. So eventually when you go to upper block P5 and P6, you will have already know how to analyze your question, how to structure your answer. Okay, so these are the techniques that we teach in MindStretcher. We have them in our worksheets, okay, from P4 to P6. Okay, P3 because P3 just started learning. So we do not want to let them have all these framework first, let them understand the science first. Okay, but for P4 to P6, right, we have all these in our worksheets so that we can, other than learning the concepts, we learn how to analyze the question and structure our answers. Okay, so P4 is when we will start teaching this, and then eventually when you reach to PSLE level, okay, all these you have mastered already. Okay, and you can aim for the AR1 that you are targeting. Okay, yeah. So anyone has any questions regarding these two frameworks? No?
Yeah, so feel free to ask if you have any questions.
Yeah, feel free to ask questions.
On the chat, some questions to see
Yeah.
whether there's any. Yeah. Okay. Things okay. They are mainly answering to your question. Okay, I think one question from Sumita, right? Is this CCC and AIR framework used in MindStretcher, taught the same way in other MS lessons?
Taught in the same way in other MS lesson. Yeah, they are taught in the same way. So in our worksheets, there is this AIR component. Okay, so that is when the teachers will guide the student how to use CCC and how to use AIR to structure the answers. Okay, so it's taught in the same way in the MindStretcher classes. Right? So that can be found in the AIR, but when you go to the practice questions, okay, there are some prompts to help you in your CCC and AIR. Okay, so sometimes in the practice question, if you can apply the AIR answering framework, okay, there will be icon to tell you, okay, you can use this AIR framework. Okay, if it's applicable lah. Because like I mentioned, not all questions you can use AIR. Any other questions? Okay, anyone knows CER? CER? So some of you learn CER in school. What is CER? You sure you are P3 student? Okay, very good. Right, so even P3 students have learned CER. As a student online was asking whether CER and AIR are the same. I would say they are similar. So I think CER is a claim, evidence, and reasoning, which is used by most schools. But actually, different schools use different terms, different ways to structure the answers. I would say they are similar. So claim is like the answer, right? Claim is like the answer. Then E is evidence, right? Evidence is the information, and R is the reasoning. So reasoning is the same. Okay, so they are very similar. But in MindStretcher, we will use AIR. All right. Any other questions? Yeah. Thanks for asking the questions for those online. Any more questions you can put in the chat also, so that you can answer here live as well. Anyone else on the ground has questions regarding this?
So as you all think about your questions, we have also put in the chat, and you can see if the online folks have any other questions in the last couple of minutes. Okay? Yeah.
Anyone has questions? No? All good?
Things.
Mustard slows down reproduction of bacteria. Yes, regarding the last question on the bacteria, So one of you were asking, must we write the second point, the information that the bacteria increase, the bacteria slowed down or controlled the reproduction more effectively? I would say yes. They will make a better answer. In fact, to get the full 2 marks, that's what I will recommend. Okay, because if you just write that it killed the bacteria for both 3 minutes and in 1 hour, so it has a much lesser number of, there are fewer bacteria, that essentially is just the same point and you only get 1 mark from that. Okay, so the second mark, which is harder to get, that is to be able to observe that over the time of 1 hour, it didn't increase much when you use liquid tea. Okay, so effectively it controlled the reproduction, so it doesn't grow that much. Because let's say they use a soap, right? If it grows that much, that fast in 1 hour, then it's not that effective at killing the bacteria. It killed them temporarily, but in 1 hour it's going to grow back. Then you essentially have not really killed them. Okay, so second answer is definitely must be there. The increase was lesser than that for soap. Yeah, so behind your answer is correct. That's the phrasing is slightly off. The bacterial increase was less. Okay, so the bacterial increase when using liquid tea was lesser than when using soap. Yeah, just make your answer clearer. Okay. Thanks for that. What is AIR? AIR stands for answer, information, and reasoning. Okay, for those who only join like a bit later, so AIR stands for answer, information, reasoning. So if you, let's say you use CER in school, okay, it will be very similar, but in MathStrategy we call it AIR, answer, information, and reasoning. Okay, maybe you can go back to the slide on AIR. Later. Yeah, here. So this is the AIR, okay, for those who need it. So again, A is to answer, provide a one state, one choice, or one claim. Okay, then you extract information from the question, and then you use science concept to explain. Okay. Okay, one of you is asking about the what? Confused.
WLC question.
In WCLC question, do you have to mention changes states from? No, you do not need to mention changes state from what to what. You can say that it condenses to form water droplets. That's it. Or the water evaporates. So you name that change. Is it evaporate? Is it condense? Into what? So you do not need to say, oh, it changes from liquid state to gaseous state, or gaseous state to liquid state. Okay, do not need to do that. All right.
Marks versus 1 mark.
So there are actually no half marks in PSLE, as far as I know. Okay, so there are no half marks given. Yeah. I see a lot of questions on the steam. So I think that is, again, like I mentioned earlier, the steam, the mist, that is one question that a lot of students still have trouble with, okay? Which we'll talk about it later. Can I explain the compression of spring slide? Okay, the whole chat moves very fast. Like for 2 blocks of the same weight placed on 2 different springs, how does the determine which one has a more elastic potential and which one supports 1 block and 2 block? Okay, regarding this question on 2 blocks of the same weight placed on 2 different springs, right? In actual fact, both springs will exert the same elastic potential energy, will exert the same elastic spring force and have the same elastic potential energy because you are placing the same weight on each spring. Okay, so the spring will exert an equal and opposite force, which is the elastic spring force in that case. So actually the forces are the same, the energy level also the same. Okay, They will only be different if, let's say, you have a stiffer spring and a less stiff spring, okay, compressed or stretched to the same length. So when we are comparing to the same length, then there will be different, they will exert different elastic spring force and they will have different elastic potential energy. Okay, so I hope that answered your question. Water current can carry water away from the spot it landed. Yeah, it is possible. Behind your question on the water launching question, water currents can carry the ball away from the spot it landed on. Okay, remember that was a suggest why question. Suggest why question, like I mentioned, right? You just need to give a sensible explanation. So just now my explanation was that there's water ripple, okay? So we cannot identify, we cannot pinpoint the exact point it has landed. But another possible answer, which is still a sensible explanation, is that because there's water current, the ball moved away from its original landing point. Then we cannot tell where it has landed. We cannot measure it accurately. Okay, so yes, Lihan, your answer is also possible. Okay, so that's why it's a suggest why question. There can be multiple possible answers. Okay. Okay, some of you are still asking steam, water vapor, or so is steam, water vapor, water droplet? Steam, okay, for everyone to know online and on the ground here, steam is water vapor, but it's hot water vapor. So when we boil water, steam is produced, but we cannot see steam. What you see is the mist, and I said at the start, mist is water droplets. Okay, so the steam that was produced have condensed to form that mist that you can see. So whatever you can see is liquid state. Whatever you cannot see is in the gaseous state. Okay, so you don't go around and say, I can see steam. Nobody can see steam. Okay, you can only see water droplets in the form of mist. Okay, so it's the same as clouds. What are clouds made of? Is cloud made of water vapor? No, right? What you see as cloud is actually the mist, but it's in the sky. Okay, so that's the same. So cloud is also water droplets that are combined together to form a cloud. So the mist is also water droplets. Okay, so I hope that clarifies. So steam and water vapor, thank you. So steam and water vapor, they are the same, just that steam is hotter. Okay. Yeah. So I think we have come to the end of this sharing session. Okay. So like I said, do apply the frameworks. Okay, the CCC and AIR framework in your open-ended questions. Okay, doesn't mean that open-ended questions are the only one you want to focus on. Make sure you also have some practice on MCQ to get a highest mark you can get for your exams. Okay, so thanks everyone for joining today. I hope you have learned something today, right? For those online as well, thanks for joining us. Okay, I know it's a Saturday morning, okay, but this is very important to really do well for your exams. All right, thank you, Lydia. Thanks everyone. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. All right. So, yeah. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.